we will be implementing some web servers. Like we will be implementing fully functional real web servers. It's not a toy, it's a real web server. You can actually deploy it somewhere and it will be working. Yet, we will be writing only 20 or 30 lines of codes in 2 hours. So I'm asking you to follow me to write the code together, right? Today, there won't be much of writing. So I'm also a really slow typer. Whenever I'm typing, I really suggest and advise you to type with me and follow the course with me. If not, that's also okay. But as I said, it's gonna be an easy one, hopefully. Okay, so today I will be starting by giving you some spoilers. To be honest, personally, I don't really like spoilers, but there is one person in this room who loves spoilers. Do you know him? Yeah, he's just there. He loves spoilers. Yeah. Anyway, so I will just show you what we're gonna have at the end of this lecture. So in about 2 hours, I will just show you the result we're gonna have, and then you can hopefully follow with me until we reach that result. By the way, without further ado, can you please raise your hand if you are seeing week 4 in your computer? Has everybody successfully copied today's lecture from the GitHub repository? Are you all able to see week 4 here? Can you please raise your hand? Okay. Did you copy the repository? It's I'm not sure how I can zoom here. It's the official repository. You can just clone it here, and you will see that week 4 is just here. But to be honest, week 4 is nothing fancy at the moment. It's mostly copy-paste of week 3. I will just show you here. I shamelessly copied and pasted this folder. It's week 3 models and services to here, and I just renamed as week 4. Obviously, it's not exactly the same. I just put a couple of more files here, like index.html and views stuff, but we will be talking about them soon, so don't worry about them. But apart from that, it's basically the same. So this is the index.js from last week, and this is my index.js from today. They are literally the same. So let me just show you the final version we're gonna have today. Oops, okay. Week 4. I think it's gonna be better if I can make it bigger. Okay, so this is the end result we're gonna be seeing today. As you can see, up until now, we were just typing node index.js, and we were seeing some results on our console. This is the first time that we are seeing a result in our browser. So this is a Chrome browser. I think you're already familiar with it because in the first week, this is the console that you all fiddle with. So there is a homepage. My homepage is not fancy yet. It just says hello, but we will be also doing some operations like this. So I just type localhost 3000 /person/oil, and it gives me the all people in my database. So up until now, the only way we do it is that we were just using the print all names function of the user servers, right? But this is the first time we are seeing the result in the browser. So we have a running web server, and my browser talks to my web server, and my web server actually responds back. So this is the first time we are seeing it here. But this is not just it. So this is a way to display all the people in our database. What else can we do? So at the end of today's lecture, we will be able to create people or person from the browser, and we will be able to delete them also. So let me just show you this. Actually, before going that, so this is the list of all people with the number 2, and I only have Mert and Arman. And for example, if I want to see the details of Mert, I can just type the ID of Mert, and it's here. So I'm seeing the name of this person, age, and the meetups he already attended, and his ID. And I had another person in my database. It was Arman. And in order to be able to get details of that person, I just type person/ID, and here it is.
I'm 35 now.
Oh,
That was from last year.
all right, okay. Never mind. We are not promising to tell the truth here, so you can be 25 if you like. I don't mind. And what I said that so we were able to get all the list in my database. We were able to display the details of each person. What else? So we will be able to create some people. We will be able to make some post requests. If you don't understand it, that's totally okay. That's all this week is all about. So we will be talking about this topic a lot in the next 2 hours. So no worries, I'm just giving you the spoilers. So at the end of today's lecture, you'll have a full understanding of what's going on here. So I said that this command actually creates a person. But how do I know that? Of course, we have this functionality. Let me just refresh the page. So I'm seeing myself here. Oops. So I have now 2 of me here. Let me delete one. So at the end of today's lecture, we will also be deleting some people. I think my ID is 3 now. So let me just refresh the page. So one of them is gone. Let me also, for example, delete Mert from here. It's here. So it's nothing really that fancy. But the thing is that all we are doing, all the operations we just did, we are doing it via browser. How does it sound? Does it sound cool? Is it any different than what you were doing up until now? All right, at least some of people nodding. Okay, so let me just switch back to the version that you all have. By the way, the code piece that we're gonna write today, I will push it to GitHub after the lesson. So I really suggest that you follow the code, the writing with me. But if you can't, that's also okay. You will have the code anyways. But before going into the details of this week, let's start talking about how does this thing work. Because in the previous weeks, we were just typing node index.js and we were seeing the result just there. So it was easy. It was all in the console. But how does my browser knows where to talk to? So I'm writing here localhost 3000 and it magically says me hello. And if I type localhost 3000 /person /all, it gives back all the people in the database. So I'm not talking about how it calculates the database, how it reads. I'm not talking about that. How does my browser knows where to talk to? So when I type here localhost 3000, what happens? What do you think? Or let me actually paraphrase that question. Let me start with a website we all know. What happens when I type here google.com? How does my browser knows which server to talk to? So we just saw that in order to be able to my browser to be able to display data, it should talk to a web server, right? In our case, my browser was talking to my local computer, this very specific computer. But from that analogy, we can also assume that, for example, Google has a web server, at least one web server out there trying to serve people, right? But when I type here google.com, so I'm seeing a web page here. Where does this result is coming from? Have you got any idea? Any guesses? No, at least one? Yeah. Sorry? That is correct. So the HTML here is coming from Google's server. My question is that when I type google.com, my browser knows where this Google web server is. My question was that. So how does my computer knows where this web server is? Exactly, DNS. Can you please raise your hand? Have you ever heard of DNS before? DNS. Yeah. All right. Nice. At least some of you. So can I please ask you what is DNS? Like,
IP address, exactly. So it's a table that is like a lookup table.
that
When
is
you
pretty
type
much
Google. Yeah.
like 100% correct.
Yeah.
So let me just repeat the answer because the mic was a bit late. So DNS is basically just a list that matches the domain names to IP addresses. What? Okay, I use some other keywords now. What is a domain? What is IP address? So google.com here is the domain. Is that clear? So there is nothing to discuss about it. It's the domain. It's the definition of it. But what is an IP address? What does it look like? I'm pretty sure all of you have seen some kind of IP addresses. Yeah. Like a number. Like, how does it look like?
Like a number. It's like a long number, like
Long.
a 10 digits number, I think.
Okay, let me just, for example, type here IP address.
Yes, exactly.
This is my IP address. This is the IP address, exact location of my computer in the internet, in the public internet. Is that clear? But what's the domain name? How does it different? How they are different? What is the domain name? What's an IP address? The answer is a bit simpler than you thought. Domain address and IP addresses, they are actually just a match somewhere. They are called DNS server. But to be honest, domain names are just for us people. Machines don't care about domain names. So whether it is google.com, facebook.com, twitter.com, they have no idea. They only understand from the IP addresses. So this computer has an IP address. Google servers has an IP address. Every web server in the world has an IP address. But the thing is that it's almost impossible for me to memorize this IP address. So I can easily memorize, I don't know, like 100 websites, right? Twitter.com, facebook.com, google.com, blah, blah. But it's really, I would say, impossible to memorize all the IP addresses. So some people out there came up with this idea of DNS servers. This DNS server is basically just a machine, just a computer running somewhere that matches domain names to IP addresses. So whenever I type google.com here, so what do you think happens? My computer talks to a DNS server first, before anything else. When I just type here, the first thing that happens is my computer, actually Google Chrome, talks to a DNS server saying that, okay, I want to get this google.com, but I have no idea where it is. So please tell me the IP address of it. Oops, sorry. Then, did I just close? So I just typed here. My browser asked the IP address of google.com, and some server, DNS server, tells my computer, okay, you're looking for google.com, and the IP address is just there. But then we were actually comparing this localhost to google.com. And I would say they work in a really pretty much the same fashion. But whenever I was just showcasing the end result of today's lecture, I was typing here localhost, but again, there was a number just after that, localhost 3000. Do you know what that is? Port number, yes. So I think Arman told this sentence like 5 times already, and I will repeat it for the 6th time. Naming is really hard. And in computer science, you would actually encounter a lot of stuff that are named horribly, but port is not one of them. I think port is a great naming. It is really like a port, like think of a port in a city. And let's take the example of Hamburg. So Hamburg is a city, but Hamburg has some ports, right? So in that case, domain name is the name of the city, Hamburg, but let's assume that you are a captain of a ship. So you want to go to Hamburg, but it's not enough for you to say, I want to go to Hamburg. You have to say which port you're going to use, right? Because ship just cannot go to Hamburg. You have to specify the port. So this, again, saying that I want to go to Hamburg, in this case, localhost, and I want to use this port, 3000. But what here, we just type google.com, and we didn't specify any port. What happened here? I just said that you have to specify the port, but then I just conflicted myself. I didn't specify any port here, yet I was able to see the result here. What do you think happened? Computer decides which port to take. That's correct. Kind of. There's actually a default port. So people out there decided that if there is no port specified for the HTTP world, for the internet, let's say, if you don't specify anything, the default port is 80. So what if I type here 80, google.com and 80? What do you think is going to happen? By the way, have you ever tried this before? Have you ever tried typing port here? So I just said that this is the default port. What should we expect here? Same, right? Okay, it didn't work out as I thought it would. Is it HTTPS? All right, okay. Actually, nothing happened. Well, actually, it looked like as if nothing happened. Because 80 was the default port, it is omitted. Well, you can type the port 80, but because it was the default port, it's omitted from the browser. But in the background, it is still using the port 80. Is that okay? Is it all clear up until now? Okay, then my next question would be, I just said that 80 is the default port, yet in my example, I just type here a random number, 3000. What is that? Why didn't I use just 80? Because it's the default one, right? Why didn't I make my life easier? Because then I wouldn't have to type the port here, localhost would be just fine. What do you think is the reason? Yes, so 80 is the default port for HTTP. Every computer has, every IP address actually has like a lot of ports. To be honest, I don't know the exact number, but it's around more than 60,000, I guess. So there are some ports that are specified, that are reserved for specific purposes. For example, in this case, 80 was reserved to be the default port for HTTP requests. So the computer, my operating system, actually reserves some ports for some specific operations. And in order to be on the safe side, I've just chose this random number. And I also suggest you to choose a random number like that, 3000, 2000, or 4000, or whatever you like. But anything below 1000 would be a bit dangerous. Dangerous meaning that you would actually try to use a port that is already reserved by the operating system. So I really don't suggest that. But if you're really curious, I think you can. But I suggest not to do that. But why 3000? So I said that a random number 3000, but 3000 really doesn't look random, right? It looks nice. So I'm not gonna ask you why, because there is no real answer. Somebody chose it, and it's by convention. I'm not sure when this became the convention, but just as we name our files called like index.js, index.html here, actually, there is nothing special about name index. There is nothing special about, for example, folder name models or services or wheels, but it's by convention. For example, this looks like a real proper project structure. And if you, for example, join to Wayfair today, I'm pretty sure they have a similar structure. If you were to join Uno, I'm sure, like 100% sure, we have a similar structure. So this coding is all about humans. It's not, programming is about humans. It's not about machines. We are not trying to please the machines. We are trying to please humans, us. So if you can be nice to other people, that would be great. So in this world, if you just Google a Node.js tutorial, again, I'm pretty sure that 90% of tutorials, they're just using port 3000. So it's, again, by tradition chosen, but it doesn't have any special meanings. Am I making sense up until now? Is that all clear? Okay, cool. Then let's start with today's lecture. I'm closing that one. So this is the week 4 directory. There is nothing special about it. I just copied and pasted from, no, this is not it. Sorry. So this is the copy paste from week 3. There is nothing special about it. There is a main function that creates Mert and Arman. And we also create a Women Techmakers meetup here. We make Arman attend this meetup. We also make Mert attend this meetup. And we ask this meetup to print a report. And also we are saving Mert and Arman to database. I think you're all familiar with this service. There's nothing new about it. You already used these services in your homeworks. These services has these add and find all methods because they are extending from the base service. Let me just show you this. So meetup service extends from base service. Person also extends from base. And in base service, we have this find all, add, delete, find, say all functions, which we don't have to worry about because Maria will be replacing these functions with a real database next week. So I think this is the last week you're seeing this file. You can have a good look at it. Next week, you're going to have more fancier stuff here. All right, let's start. So obviously, this is not a web server. But you might remember I typed node index, and we had a running web server. What does that mean? So what happens when I type here node index.js? It just creates Mert and Arman, and it makes them attend some meetups, and it just finishes, right? Let's try node index.js. Oh, I'm again not in week 4. Node index.js. So I typed it. It did something. It doesn't matter now. It did something and it exited. The process is finished here. However, do you think, for example, web server of Google, does it ever finish? It does not, right? Because if it does, then you will not be able to reach google.com. So in our case, we need a web server that is always up and running. That is always up and running and responding our requests from our browser. So that's the basic difference, and most important difference of today's lecture. But let's start. But where do we start? So obviously, we are not going to use any of them. So I'm just selecting all and deleting. So we have a now fresh index file.
By the way, if you have any questions during the lecture, please raise your hands. We have a couple of teaching assistants here sitting in the back. Again, they're really bored. So they will help you out. If you're not able to follow, if you're running into any problems, errors, just let us know and we'll help you out.
Yeah, thank you. Today, okay, what was I saying? It's gone now. All right, so today we will be implementing a web server, but using what? Node.js, that's for sure. We have been using Node.js for about now 4 weeks now. But although it's quite possible to build a web server in Node.js, Node.js has all the capabilities of that. Well, Arma said that you can pretty much do anything with JavaScript, although it may not be ideal, but you can, including machine learning. And Arma just implemented a tool for his guitar, so you can do pretty much anything. Node.js has very well the capacity of a web server. However, I just said that in the beginning of the lesson, I said that I will be writing like 20 or 30 lines of code. So obviously, it's not possible to have a web server using Node.js in just like 10 lines. So I will be just cheating a bit. I will be using Express.js. I think you have already seen it in the title of today's meetups. Express.js is a framework that enables us to create web servers easily. So it doesn't add any functionality on top of Node.js. Node.js already has all of these functionalities. What it does is that it just gives us the flexibility and ease of use. That's all about it and nothing else. But how do we use it? So I said that Express, we'll be using Express. And Express is an external library. I think Mert covered on the second lecture. What were we doing when we were trying to use an external library? Sorry? To import. But before that, my project actually doesn't have that. But require it. Exactly, install. How do I install it? Can you please help me here? npm install and so Express. So yeah, I will be really happy if you can also follow it with me. I just type npm install Express. I actually type npm I. It's short for install. And now what am I seeing here? If I check the package.json, I'll just see that Express.js magically appeared in my package.json, right? Right now, my project has all the capabilities of Express framework. So what is the next step? So my project has all the code that Express.js has, but yet it still doesn't make use of it. How do I make use of an external library? Require it. Okay, let me just do it. So it's just require and express. So this is our first line.
Is this your slow typing?
Well, yeah. The thing is that I'm not a slow typer, but I'm really bad at multitasking. So I can either type or talk. So that's why it feels a little slow. So I include Express in my project. So now my index.js knows about Express framework. So this is our first step into Express framework. If you have a problem, can you please raise your hand? Because we also have some board TAs there. They can help you out. All right, it looks like we're fine. So my next step is that actually initializes Express framework. How do I do that? Well, you can just go to Express frameworks documentation. That's easy, but I will just tell you this. It's Express and this. So in our second line, we just create a web application. So web application is just there. But the thing is that we need to tell this framework, Express.js, to which port to listen to. Because in my example, I was typing localhost 3000, and somehow my Express server was responding to me back. But actually, it's not possible to say that, okay, listen to all ports. It's not possible. There is no such a thing. You have to specify the port. In our case, so we were always saying that we're going to be using 3000. So I will just say 3000. I will just tell Express to listen to port 3000. You can actually get a help from your IDE. It's Visual Studio Code. It's like when you type app and when you type dot, you will have some suggestions from the Visual Studio Code. And as you can see, listen is one of them, actually one of the very first ones. So listen is a function that we need to call. And we need to tell which port to listen to. We just said it's 3000. Do you think it's enough? Yeah, it's pretty much enough. But however, how do I make sure that it actually started listening? Because remember the last lecture, there are some operations that are asynchronous, that are happening asynchronously. Listen is one of them. The thing is that, so how do you know that an operation is asynchronous? Well, you really can't accept that, I don't know, looking at the source code or looking at the documentation. But the general idea is that whenever you're communicating with an external environment, that is usually asynchronous. So, for example, let's take a look at our base servers. So this is supposed to be our database. And here we are reading files from my computer, my hard disk, actually here. So my Node.js actually doesn't have the necessary rights to read the file. It just tells the operating system, can you please read this file and tell me the result? So my Node.js actually communicates with the operating system here. What happens is almost the same. Here, we are saying that, can I please listen to 3000? Because normally, my operating system has the control over all ports. But at this very line, we are requesting a permission. And as you might guess, I was talking for about like 3 minutes now. This is an asynchronous operation. And the only way that I make sure that it works is to provide a callback function here. So this is a empty callback function. And I don't have anything else to do. I just need to know if it worked okay. So here I'm just typing console log. And you can type whatever you like. I'm just typing server listening. So what we did is that we introduced Express to our index file. We make a new Express app. And we just told this app to listen to port 3000. This is pretty much it. This is a web server. Well, it doesn't do much, but this is a web server. So yeah, let's go and try to run it. So I'm just typing node index.js. Can you please all type node index.js? Are you all seeing server listening? Do you have some errors? If you have some errors, can you please raise your hand? I want you all to see this server listening part. Are we all okay?
We have time, so don't worry.
Yeah.
And we are many people. We're going to help you out. let's get this going.
Okay, so let me repeat what I just said like 10 minutes ago. Here, the most important difference is that when I type node index.js at the beginning of this lecture, it is just executed and finished. Here, what you are seeing is that it is still listening. So it didn't finish. It's still listening. So then, what do you think is going to happen when I type here localhost 3000? What should I expect to see? Any ideas? So in my example, we were able to see a hello welcome message there. And are we expecting a hello here? Okay, let me just see. So I'm seeing here cannot get slash. Can you please raise your hand if you didn't see cannot get slash?
It's fine. Raise your hands.
Yeah, we have time today. Can you please go? All right, sure. Here. So this is the simplest web server you can have. And when you run it, when you execute it, it starts listening on port 3000. And when you type localhost 3000, you should be able to see cannot get slash. Do you have a question? Or okay, can you please raise your hand if you have seen this page? Cannot get slash. Cool. By the way, I'm not saying about this, like let's say localhost 3001. I'm not talking about this page. This error and this one is completely different. This means that your web server is up and running. It is actually there, but it just doesn't know how to serve this one. However, this means that your server is crashed. It is important because while you're doing homework, you will see a lot of these errors, and it's important to know which error is which. This means no web server. This means web server is there, but it just doesn't know how to respond to that specific path. Are you all okay? Cool. Okay, so the example I showed, the spoiler I gave, it had an hello here. Let's try to do that. So here, I have to teach my web server to know how to respond to requests. But the thing is that, let me also talk about this slash. I just type here localhost 3000, but my web server is complaining about it doesn't know how to respond to slash. The thing is that, what is slash? What's that? I didn't type anything like that. Exactly, this is called the root path. So we have been talking about domain names. In this case, localhost was the domain name. And we have been talking about ports here. Port was the 3000 part here. The part that comes after the domain and port is called path. So here, if you don't again type anything, the default path, the root path is slash. So now I need to teach my web server to how to respond to this root path request. The way to do is that, so I need to tell the app variable here. I'm just typing again app, and when I do this, you will see a function named get. Get means that please respond to get request. What's a get request? I just started talking about request and we are already deep in trouble, right? What is a get request? The thing is that whenever your browser talks to web servers, it has to use some verbs. It's like fetch me that profile page. I don't know, when, for example, you're using GitHub, please create me a pull request. Can you please update my profile page? Can you please send this email? So whenever your browser talks to web server, it actually should include a verb. In this case, the first verb today we're going to learn is the get. Get is a pretty common English word. Get means like, can you please get me that page? Can you please get me this path here? So in order to be able to teach our web server about how to respond to get requests is this. So get is a function. The first parameter is the path. So what was the path? It was root slash. So I just told my web server to respond to slash. But then again, your favorite bit is coming. What else? It's callback function. Yes. So I will just create an empty function here, and we're gonna fill it out. Well, this part might be a bit tricky for you because now this is a bit implementation details of Express framework. So the people who wrote Express, they decided that the first parameter is the name of the path that we're going to respond to. And the second parameter is the callback function to tell our web server about how to respond to that. So people thought that this would require two parameters. Again, let me just type this, and we will be talking about this now. So what is rec and res? They are short for something. Does this familiar to you? Yep. Request and response, almost correct. That's pretty nice. So these variables actually corresponds to request object and the response object. So request meaning that whenever I type localhost 3000 here, there is a request coming to my web server from the browser. So from browser to web server, it means request. But then I process it, I do something, I do some calculations, I don't know, I read some people from database and I do stuff. Then at the point, I need to return some response to the browser. That bit is related to the second parameter. Again, this parameter has no special meaning, only the order is important, but I'm pretty sure that 99% of the time it's gonna be rec and res, and it's just by convention. It's short for request and response.
And it's a terrible naming, right? Like rec. Yeah, it's short. We write a lot of rec and we write a lot of res. And we're saving like 4 characters or 5 characters each time we write it. And then we make it very difficult to understand. And there's only 1 character difference between rec and res. So it's actually very confusing for people. Would we use rec? Would we use res? Which one was it? When you look at it, it's very difficult to decipher if it's a request or a response. But this is the kind of the state of software engineering. So people might tell you that it's magic, that it's very difficult to do, that it's very hard to do. And you might think it's an amazing job, that people are doing a great job, they're doing it perfectly, which is completely ridiculous. Like, we're doing these things that make life difficult for our colleagues, and we're totally fine with it. That is the worst part of it. So yeah, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how software engineering in real life is, it's a lot of pain. It's not a glorious job. It's very rewarding, but we're not magicians. We are human beings, and we do a lot of mistakes. And by introducing pitfalls like this, we are introducing mistakes in our code as well. Sorry for hijacking it.
Yeah, not a problem. But again, when you see a tutorial in the web, it's always about rec and res. It's a not good naming. I don't want to be harsh on people who named this one, but it's there. And by definition, now I'm almost used to it, and I don't question it anymore. But you have every right to question. Please do so. But anyway, so now my web server knows it should respond to the path, the root path. But how? So we just talked about request and response. That in order to be able to return a response, I should deal with the response object, right? The res, the second one. Again, it's okay if it's totally okay if you're confused with that, but this is just how people who are creating Express framework decided. So I'm just typing res. Res is an object, and when I type a res dot, my Visual Studio Code suggests me some functions here. The first function we are going to be using is send. So I will be sending a response. It almost looks like English. I wish we had a response here, but I will keep using res just for educational purposes, because you're going to be seeing res everywhere. So I will just continue using it. So it's res and send. So this is the way that we return data to front end, to our browsers. So it is as simple as this. when I type hello here, now my web server knows how to respond to that request. So for Express framework, it means that whenever you see root path, just reply with hello. That's pretty much it. By the way, today I planned some mistakes. I planned some errors because I'm pretty sure you're gonna be seeing those errors in your homeworks. So let's solve them together here, and you won't have to think about it again. But of course, there will be some other errors that I didn't plan, but I will just pretend I planned them all. So yeah, everything is cool. So I introduced this root path to my web server. What do you think is gonna happen when I refresh the page? We should be seeing hello, right? I refreshed it, nothing changed. What did we do wrong? That is correct. Yeah, I should stop it. Why do you think I should stop my server? Because the thing is that I just said it never finished execution. It still says server listening and it continues listening. So when we just type 3 lines of code and did this, we just told Express to listen to 3000. It started listening and it never stopped. So I should stop it and I should start it again. Let's see if it worked this time. Yes, it worked. So let me just make it bigger. So can you please raise your hand if you see hello in the screen? Okay. Can we please have a look on the people who couldn't see it? So I just introduced this root path and I put a callback function here, meaning that whenever you see root path, just respond with hello. And then I restarted my web server. That is the important bit, because if I did not, it was still running the old version. And I refreshed my page and I saw hello. So this is the bit. Does that make sense? Is that all clear now? Please don't hesitate to interrupt us, because we are going to be building on top of this. It's also pretty important because you're going to be using this in all your homeworks. This is really important. So please don't hesitate to interrupt. We have a lot of DAs. Okay, so I'm hearing some questions about how do you stop a web server? That is a pretty good question. The way I do it is Control and C. You can see my shortcut on the screen, but it might be different on Windows computers. I'm not sure. Same? Okay, so when you type Control C, it will just stop like that. If you didn't stop, it will continue listening to that, and it will actually ignore your latest changes. It will still continue serving the old version of the index file. Okay, so once we figured out this error, I will tell you a secret that so that you won't have to deal with this problem again. I told you that I copied and pasted from Victory, but I also cheated a bit, so I sneaked in some changes here. Let's have a look on package.json. You see something different here, node1. So node1 is actually, I think it's short for node monitor or something like that. It doesn't really matter. So the thing is that when you type
naming.
Again, like, why is not like node monitor? It's node1. People try to do some shortcuts and it ended up having horrible names. Anyway, what node1 does is that it just makes our lives easier, and whenever it detects a change in your code, it just restarts your server. So this is only important when you're developing, because you're making changes all the time. It actually doesn't have any importance on an actual web server, because like obviously they don't have any code changes. Whenever there is a code change, they should be deployed there. It's not like that. But here in development environment, it's actually quite practical if you have node1. So if you already didn't, please type npm install, but I already did. So instead of node index.js, you can just type nodemon index.js, and you see almost a similar result, but just a bit different, just a tad different.
Are you sure it's going to work without installing it globally? Is it possible that you have it in your global
That is a good question.
dependencies?
I don't know. Yeah, it's using the global one. Okay, I reverted back. I sneaked in some changes. It didn't work. That's also what I planned. So this is all planned. The thing is that you can also use some other libraries that are not included in your package.json. The only way to do is that installing it globally. It means that it doesn't belong to this specific project. It belongs to your computer. So it doesn't matter which folder you're in, you can use that library. The way to do is that, of course, it's straightforward. npm install nodemon. But as you can see here, there's this like small trick here. This -g. It is again short for global. It means that whenever you type npm install nodemon, it's not gonna end up in your package.json, but it will be installed in your computer. It doesn't matter where. We're not interested in that. It's installed somewhere, but not in the specific folder, not in the specific project. So you can use it whenever you like, wherever you like. Obviously, I already did it. If you didn't already, can you please type npm install nodemon and -g. -g means global. And apart from that, starting from this moment, I will be using nodemon. By the way, if it doesn't work for you, you can still use node index.js. It's the same basically, but it just makes our lives easier so that I don't forget stopping and restarting my web server. Okay? So let me demonstrate how it works. I'm just coming to my index.js, and let me just, I don't know, do a simple change here. I'm just putting a space here. When I save my index.js, as you can see, nodemon understood that index.js actually changed and restarted my web server. So I didn't need to do anything else. I didn't need to stop it and start it again. Let's see it in action. For example, now it's listening to, yes? Sorry? Sorry. So currently, it's actually listening to port 3000. Let's make it listen to 3001, just out of curiosity. I saved it, nodemon restarted. I didn't have to restart it. And now localhost 3000 doesn't answer anything. When I type 3001, it should be the same. But again, I will stick to 3000. And because I'm using nodemon, I don't have to restart it again. But if you don't have it, it's also okay. You can keep using node as normal, as usual, but remember to stop it and start it again when you make changes. Otherwise, it will be still using the old version. By the way, this is nothing important, just convenience. You know, you can just eliminate it by clicking here and there. It's
Let's still
big.
make sure everybody has nodemon and up and running.
Okay, so if you couldn't install nodemon, can you please raise your hand and people would help out you? Okay, so you will have nodemon soon, but it is nothing critical for today's lecture. Up until then, you can still use node index.js and it's gonna be fine. It's basically the same thing. Oops, I switched back to 3000 and it's here. So now we have a web server, right? It's up and running. It's responding to requests. It actually knows how to respond to one path, but okay, we can introduce more. But the thing is that it's not really fancy. It just says hello. However, in our browsers, they're not really used to seeing just hello, right? For example, this one is a really fancy website. It has like nice colors and buttons. It has some, I don't know, hover functionalities. You can see some images here. You can click around. It has buttons. It has some functionalities. But here, our web server is not that fancy yet. The first step towards that fanciness is HTML. The thing is that here, we're just returning hello, and we don't return any HTML. But what is HTML? I suddenly started talking about HTML. But let's try to understand what HTML is. Have you ever seen an HTML file? Yes. If you didn't, here's an HTML file. It looks pretty ugly, but it works. The thing is, I think this is one of the simplest HTML files you could see. It has HTML text, it has one head tag, it has the body tag, and it has the closing tags. Can you please raise your hand if this is the first time that you're seeing what an HTML is? Don't worry, it's okay. We have all been there. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, all right, nice. Do you think this is ugly? Just be honest. I still find it really ugly. For example, whenever you open a tag, you have to close it. Why? There should be a better way, right? So like whenever you open something, you have to close it, and I don't know, there should be a better way after 20 years of web development. But this is the HTML, and this is what we use still today. Browsers are quite smart today. However, they're also dumb in the same way. Dumb in a way that they can only understand HTML. They can only draw nice stuff using HTML. So it's no surprise that when we just return hello, my web server, not my web server, Chrome browser didn't know how to make it look fancier. It doesn't have any styling. It's not red or underlined. It doesn't have button or stuff because it's just data. It's not an HTML. However, this is an HTML. Let's see. Up until now, we have been all using the console tab of the Chrome Dev Tools, but there is also a nicer tab here, Elements. It's called Elements. And if you have a quick pick here, it's all HTML. So we have this even more uglier HTML in GitHub page. However, it is ugly to you, to me, but it's not really ugly to browser. Browsers can actually understand this and make nice things out of it. So we don't have any, I don't know, bargaining power here. We have to obey the rules. So we have to return HTML if we want our browsers to draw nice things. Okay. We just learned how to return any data, any result here. But how do we return a file to our browser? Well, I'm not expecting to know it, but there is another function that Express framework gives us. It's again on the response object, right? Because now we are dealing with response, not request. So rest.send was sending any data, like a string. There is another file, sorry, not file, another function called sendFile. So let's take a help from our IDE, our text editor. Actually, it gives me a help, a hint here. The first parameter is the path of the file, right? So I already included this index.html in the repository. We will be just returning this index.html. But how do I tell it should return this specific index.html? It's easy, right? It's index.html. Let me just comment this out. By the way, now I'm still using Node index.js here. It wouldn't understand that because it's still serving the old version. I have to stop it and start it again. But I'm now switching to Node.man so that I won't have to do it again during this lecture. So should I expect to see this index.html when I type localhost 3000 here? What do you think? Let's try. I don't know. Okay, so we saw an error here. Path must be absolute or specify route to REST send file. What does that mean? What is talking about? Path must be absolute. What do you think the error could be? Sorry? It's not quite that. Any other guesses? Exactly, yeah. So the thing is that path has to be absolute. The path we are talking about is the path of the file. It's not this path that we have been talking about. It's the path of the file. And we're just saying that just look at the current directory. Dot here means current directory. Look at the current directory. And under the current directory, find an index.html file and serve it. So our web server actually didn't like this relative naming. We have to say exactly where this file is. The thing is that because this is a callback function and it can be executed almost in any functions, you can pass it around. So it's not really certain where this file is located, at least relatively. So we have to give it a really absolute path. But what does that mean? What's an absolute path? Yeah, exactly. It is relative to the root of my computer. It's not relative to the project or anything, my computer. But how should we know it? There is a shortcut in Visual Studio Code. You can try it. So I'm right-clicking on Next.js. There is a copy path here. Let's copy path. I copy path. Let me just paste it here. So this is my absolute path. Let me just copy paste it here. So it looks something like this, user, blah, 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 blah. It is the absolute path of this file. So wherever you run this file, I copied index.js. It should have been index.html, but you get the idea. It's the same. Whenever this file is executed, it doesn't matter. My script knows exactly where this index.html is. Let's see if it would work. I'm refreshing. Okay. We have this hello page. It's a bit different. It has a nicer styling. It even has an emoji. Cool. However, does this really look dumb to you? Do we have to do it? And let's assume that I deployed this code to somewhere. That web server doesn't know about my computer, right? This obviously wouldn't work because it is absolute. All right, it's absolute, but it's absolute in my computer. So it's not going to work in any other computer. I cannot share my code with you because this path wouldn't exist in your computer. So there should be a smart way to do it, right? So this send file function expects an absolute path, but there should be a way to generate this absolute path so that it would work in any computer. Do you know? Have you seen? Do you have an idea? Yes. How do you know it? Yeah, that was a tricky question. I was asking you, have you seen it? You should have yes, because it's, where was that? It's service. Somewhere here, yeah. So you have all seen it, and you were lying saying that you didn't see it. Sorry, okay. So this underscore dir name, again, terrible naming. It's short for directory name. I don't know, people came up with shortcuts here. It's a special variable that is available to all Node.js environment here. So you can use it anywhere you like. It's almost like in any line, you can type JSON, for example, parse, or I don't know, stringify, as JSON is already defined somewhere. It is defined, but we didn't define it. It's defined in Node.js, just like this. So this is a special variable that is available to all of our files, and it represents the current directory. Sorry? This one? This is the directory of the file. So whenever you use this variable, it gives you the current directory of which file this file is located. So you can try to have a relative naming, but also at the same time absolute naming. So here we are saying that get the current directory of this file and go one upper level, and there you will see meetup database JSON. Let's see if it is correct. So meetup service is in services. We are going one up. It's in the week 4, and person database or meetup database would be there. That's okay, right? So I'm going to be using the same variable here because we need to specify an absolute path. So underscore dir name is here. I'm just combining it with index.html. This should be okay, right? It's still relative, but it should be absolute to this file. Yay, okay, this still works. But whenever you change from that absolute path to this one, please make sure that you restarted your web server if you're not using Node.mon, because you might be still seeing the old version of the web server.
Should we take a break?
Okay, so
Should we take a break? Ömür? It's a question for you.
I think I have one more topic to cover, then we can have a break before going further.
Raise your hands if you have any questions or if you need support. We're going to come over and help you.
Okay, I have one last thing to cover before we give a break. And let's try to make our view fancier. We were having a look here, and it has a lot of different variables, right? Because this file is different for me, for you, because maybe I have the right to see this flow and you don't. And I'm logged in, maybe you're not. Maybe I'm allowed to create a pull request here, maybe you're not. So this has a dynamic content here. However, it's not that. Our web server still has a static content. What does that mean? It's static, it's stable, it's fixed, it doesn't change. So it doesn't matter who you are. Whenever, for example, if I deploy my code to somewhere else, all the world will be seeing this page. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. However, when I was showing you the spoilers of this lecture, we were able to see the contents of the database. We were able to list all the people, right? So it means, of course, we will be doing some dynamic stuff. I have a bad news for you. HTML, actually, I said that browsers, HTML, only understand HTML, but HTML doesn't support any dynamic content. That's really bad, right? So this is the only language that browsers could understand and interpret. However, we cannot make it dynamic. It's pretty sad. So we need to find a way to insert dynamic variables inside HTML so that we will have a dynamic content here. For example, let's assume that I need to say hello and the name of the person here. So hello is not really sincere, right? I need to mention the name of the people. But using only the HTML is not really possible. So today, we will be seeing another way of generating HTMLs. So can you please have a look inside the views folder? We have a couple of files there. It's called pug. Yeah, almost look like a puppy, right? That the ugly dogs. Sorry, all dogs are beautiful. Not ugly, but yeah. So can you please have a look at the layout pug? Does that look similar to you? Is it any similar to the HTML file we have been looking at? Kind of does, right? It's a bit different. Maybe it's better if I just put them side by side here and close it. So it has HTML. The most important difference is that pug doesn't have any closing tags. So in HTML, whenever you open a tag, by the way, these are called tags: HTML tag, head tag, body tag. Whenever you open a tag, you have to close it. You open a head, you close it. You open the body, you close it here. You open a script, you close it here. The most important difference is that this is indentation based. So HTML is here until this line. It's indentation based. You don't have to close this one. So for example, here, head starts. Where do you think head ends? On which line? Is it third, fourth? Yes, it's until body. Why? Because they are in the same indentation level. If you put a horizontal line here, by the way, it might be that I set it up like that. Maybe you don't have these lines. Not sure if this is default setup, but I really like seeing these indentations. So head and body is on the same level. So until the body tag here, whatever I type goes into head. After the body, for example, if I type here, it's all inside body. Until what? Here, right? This would be another level. So using these indentations, pug the people who created Bug came up with this idea that you don't need closing tags so that you can type less. But this is not the most important thing. Of course, there are other ways that you can shorten HTML files, but the most important difference is that you can actually put variables inside Pug files. How, right? So
Is it after the break?
okay, yeah.
A cliffhanger. We have an announcement.
Hi, it's me again. Just a quick announcement. We are filming this event because we want to create a promotional video to encourage engineers all around the world to create similar initiatives. So if you don't want to be featured in that video, please talk to me or talk to Nayan. Where is she? She is somewhere. Yeah, over there. Talk to her and tell her that you don't want to be featured in that video, and we will make sure that you don't appear in it. Also, we love to share success stories. So if you are documenting this learning journey and you want to write a blog post probably about it that we can share on our website, please talk to me and I will help you with that. Thank you so much. Break.
Okay.
Let's meet in 15 minutes. Thank you. We have a lot of food in the back. If you didn't have any food yet, make sure you have some, because otherwise they're going to go to waste, and we don't want that.
Başlamamız lazım değil mi? Artık. Oha abi ne güzel.
Ne güzel çekiyor.
So we will be starting again in 1 minute. So please be seated.
I think it's gonna be in, it's been like 18 minutes now, so we are over 15 minutes. So let's start. Is the food over? Were we able to finish it? Almost. We have a couple of wraps. Feel free to take them when you're going home afterwards. Otherwise, they're going to go to waste. We don't want that. So make sure the food is out. We're going to continue with the second part of the lecture. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know if you have any comments. If you need us to go over certain sections. The remaining bits are a little bit fancy. Now we're going to really create a dynamic environment where we list the items on our database. This will be closer linked to the homework for this week. So please make sure you at least get this part right. And in the next hour, again, some spoilers, we're going to be listing the users, and we're going to create new users. And in the homework, you will pretty much replicate this for the actions between your objects. So if a person needs to attend the meetup, that will happen over a URL. That will happen from the browser, and then we will be able to refresh list of attendees or any other interaction that you have. So the interactions that you have built so far in your homeworks were triggered in your index.js files, right? Like Arman attends WTMB meetup. And now we're going to do it over the web server, which is really breakthrough. So this is the first time that you're going to do your own real web projects, dynamic web projects. So, you know, let's do this. It's exciting.
All right. So what was my last sentence before we went to break? Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Nice. Exactly. So I had a bad news for you. Index in HTML files, we actually cannot put any dynamic content. So we need a better way. We need another way to do that. The way to do it is
very ugly. No, it's not. They are beautiful dogs. We love them. Pugs.
In our case, we are going to be using the pug templates. Pug almost looks like HTML. We already went over the tags, but it is a bit also different. The first thing that we're going to be seeing here in the views folder, we have index.pug and layout.pug. We already went over the layout pug about how similar it is to our current HTML, right? So it had the head, body, script, or pretty much anything except this hello part. Instead of that hello part, what do we have here? It's something not HTML, right? It's called block content. What does that mean? So this is the reason that we're actually introducing pug here. This is the dynamic bit. And also, let's also have a look at the index file, in index pug. It says extends layout, and it also has a block content in it. And this content has h1 hello. So, okay, this h1 bit is a bit familiar to us from our HTML file, right? We had an h1 tag here, which is the header, the first header. It looks quite similar to that, but except from that, it's not really looking like HTML. So this is the variable, this is the dynamic bit. And you would remember this extend keyword from JavaScript. It means that you can extend pug files from each other. So you can create one file and use it in multiple places, just as we did here. For example, here we had one base class, right? Base service. And our meetup servers and our person servers was using some functions from the base servers. So we didn't have to define them again and again. We defined it once and we used them everywhere. But how is it really useful when it comes to the HTML? You know, here in services, we inherit some behaviors, but what does that mean in the HTML world, in the browser? Let's take a look at this website. When I browse through the website, I'm clicking here. I'm, for example, checking the pull request. But as you can see, like this part changes a lot. However, for example, the navigation bar just stays there, or the footer here. Whenever I go there, I'm going to the main page of Women Techmakers Berlin. It still has the same footer. It still has the same navigation bar. Do you think people writing GitHub, do you think they write the navigation bar or footer for each file? It doesn't really make sense, right? Because GitHub has like thousands of pages. It doesn't really make sense. So instead, they use a similar technique. I'm not sure if they exactly used PAC tablet engine, but I'm pretty sure they used a similar technique to replicate HTML. So here, we're going to write once this layout. And when it comes to the content, we're just saying that, you know, this part is actually dynamic. So render up until now. And at this point, I will tell you what to render. In this case, for example, when we say that, can you please render index.pack, our Express.js will check what it extends. So first, we see that it extends layout. So it will go to layout and it will start the common bits. Then after it is extending layout, so what does that mean, extending? Extending in classes means something, but here you can think of like getting this bit and just pasting it here. It's basically that, right? So, but instead of doing that, instead of copying, pasting the same thing everywhere, we are just extending it so it feels like it's just there. You can just pretend it's there. After extending layout, there's a content bit. So this content actually goes to this part. So in the layout, content will be actually rendered by the index pack. Enough with talking, let's see it in action. Let me make it bigger. So we first sent a simple hello message to our browser. Then we started sending the HTML file. But how do we send the pack file? The thing is that we cannot use the same method because it's not one file, right? We need a way to combine them together, and also we can send the pack file to the browser, but browser wouldn't understand it because browsers only understand HTML. So we need a magical way, well, nothing is magic, but we need a magical way to combine those pack files, and out of those merged combined pack files, we need to generate HTML because browsers don't understand that. The keyword here that we have to render HTML. Render is the keyword here. So we need to tell Express we want to render something to the front end. Here, let me open this part.
I have a question. Does anybody know what render means? Does it exist in your vocabulary? Did you hear about the verb render before? Raise your hands and tell me what a render is. Cinema 4D compiles 3D models into a movie. Yeah. So we have 3D models somewhere in a software. We convert it into a movie that we enjoy. That is called rendering. Any other person out there, raise your hands. Please, what is rendering?
Okay, so basically it is the whole mechanism behind that is the templating engine.
Oh, wait, so this is like the universe began as a gas cloud. What is the word render in your life? You're obviously experienced. Someone else. Tell me where you heard render before, please. Please. 3D Max, the same, right? We have a 3D model that we're creating a nice image out of it or a movie out of it. And what we have here is pretty much the same. We have a model of an HTML. We have an HTML template. We have a layout. And then we have some dynamic content like index pug. These are very much like different 3D models, objects in our scene. And what we do is we bring them together. We bring them together and compose a scene out of them, compose an HTML file out of them. That's what rendering is. That's why we're calling this method render. So we say, hey, for this resource, as a response, render this view is the terminology. And that view is index pug. So we will be rendering, if you'll type it, we'll be rendering index pug here. And basically what we mean is take whatever you have in index pug and create an HTML file out of it, render an HTML file out of it. And if you remember in index pug, we are extending the layout. So what it does is when we try to render this index pug, we first take whatever bit is in there inside layout, copy paste it, and then render the bits in index pug, which is the hello, h1 tag hello. And there we have a complete HTML file that we can send to the user. So it's pretty much the same as sending a static HTML file, but this time we are rendering it on every request. We're rendering it from scratch. Does it make sense? Raise your hands if it doesn't make sense, and I'm happy to talk about it in a different way. So let's go here. You said it doesn't make sense. Okay, raise your hands if it doesn't make sense. And I'm happy to explain it in another way. Please, Lily. Converted into HTML? So that is what Express.js is doing. We are not interested in that part. Somebody wrote that part for us. We just know that if we use Express, we are able to use pug files. And we just say render index pug, like create an HTML file out of index pug, whatever is there in index pug. And whatever is there is extending the layout. So we're first bringing in the layout pug. And then wherever you see block content, we're replacing that part with whatever is in index pug. And then, Express converts it to an HTML file, rewrites the bits, adds those ugly greater than, smaller than signs, and yeah, and basically comes up with this HTML. Does that make sense? Yes. Cool. Question? Yeah. It's the first time you're seeing the pug file. Exactly. The question is, if I have the pug files, do I need HTML files? And you don't. The index HTML is just for demonstration purposes. We don't need to use it. We're not going to use it. We have a layout pug. We have index pug. And actually, we're going to be adding new pug files, new templates. We call them templates. We're going to add new templates to render different aspects of our code base. For example, listing the meetup users or all the people in our code base. We're going to add different pug templates for them. And much like index pug, they're going to extend the layout. So whatever is in the layout will be replicated in all the views so that we don't have to type them. By the way, 20 years ago, we didn't have these templates. We were literally copying and pasting the header, the logo, and the footer into every single HTML that we were building. So, Ömer said in the last hour that it doesn't really make sense. It made sense 20 years ago. The technology has advanced. Now we have templates. And now we have a much more dynamic way of building things. So you write the menu and the footer and everything only once. And then you can include them inside other pug templates. Is it a little bit more clear now what we're doing? Perfect. Let's go on.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be rendering index. Well, rendering, Arman just mentioned that it's also a bit similar to the rendering we know in other fields. It's actually rendering one HTML file, but using multiple components, using multiple different files. Here, when I say render, can you please render index.pug? It will have a look at the index pug, and it will see that it also needs to render the layout, and it will render the layout, then it will combine them together. But normally, our Express framework doesn't know how to render PAG files. We need to teach him. We need to tell him that instead of HTML, we need to render PAG files. But before doing that, let's see how it would look like, because I'm pretty sure this would throw an error. So let's try together. All right, so this is the error we are seeing. It says no default engine was specified and no extension was provided. So it's basically saying that there is a templating engine. By the way, you don't have to know about it, but PAG is a template. So basically, we need a way to tell our Express app we want to render PAG files, because it doesn't know. It has no idea now. But because it's not part of Express, and also obviously it's not a part of Node.js, it's an external library, we have to install it, right?
So I tricked you a little bit when I said Express already knows how to render POC files. It actually doesn't. And it requires a third-party library developed by another open source contributor to be able to render or understand POC files. And that's why we have to kind of install it. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to say npm I pug. So please follow that in your computers. And it's going to install the pug renderer. And then, we will tell our Express application to have that renderer and understand that, okay, we now can understand POC files. We have the renderer for it. We installed it. So, whenever you need to render a view in HTML, just use the pug renderer. So we just added a line here, app.set view engine pug is what we do. And that is our way of telling Express that, okay, whenever we ask you to render a view, it's going to be a pug view. It's going to be a pug template.
So our Express framework, Express app was trying to tell us that it doesn't know how to render because it doesn't know how to render pugs yet. Now we installed it and we told him to say that, your default view engine is pug from now on. So whenever we tell you to render something, you're going to be rendering pug files. So be aware of that. Well, I didn't need to restart my server because I'm already using NodeMon, but I did anyway. So let's refresh. This is hello, but how do I know that this is not hello from our index.html?
Good question.
Well, I don't know. I had an emoji here, and in the index pack, there is no emoji. I think this is the only way to tell. Or you can try, it's still there. I comment that. You can comment in and see that that's part where we send the HTML file back. But
let's add something to index.pug.
Okay, let's do.
Like, add your name. Save it. The server restarts automatically, and you come back here and refresh, and you see the name update. So we're actually rendering pug files. However, it's still not totally dynamic. Like, there's still static content under index pug. We don't have any variables. We don't have any way to render any dynamic content based on user input. And I hope that's what we're going to do next.
Yeah. But to be honest, this part is a bit boring because our server only knows how to respond to the root path, and it's boring. Let's try to render the people who are in our database so that we can have a dynamic content, right? And also, we can maybe practice more to implement new endpoints, new paths. So seeing what we already have here, I need to implement another path. And when I was displaying the spoilers of today, I was typing localhost 3000 /person and /all, right? So the path now would be person /all. How do I do that? So let me just copy paste this again, because obviously it's gonna be similar to that. But what do you think I need to change here? Let me clean everything. So this is a clean router. What do I need to change here? Because this thing and this thing is now same. What do I type? I need our server to respond to person /all path. How do I define the endpoint? How do I define the path? Here, okay. So I'm writing here person
/person.
all. Do you think it's gonna work? Okay, you are one step ahead of me, but let me show you here. When I type person/all, it says, I don't know how to get /person/all. I think it should give you a hint because it says it is looking for this path. However, what we defined here is missing the path here. But I believe you're gonna see this error in your homeworks. You can just, for example, debug it. If I comment this part out, it's still the same, right? So my web server behaves like it doesn't care if it is there or not because we are trying to reach that part. So let's fix it and continue.
So whatever
all right.
URL you want to serve on the front end, you should have kind of a catcher for it. And that's how we define it, app.get and the URL that goes after it. Obviously, that URL always starts with a slash. Think of it as a slash that comes after localhost 3000, and then whatever URL that you want to put that comes after it.
All right, so the first problem I'm seeing here, I don't know how to list all the people. I actually do in the previous weeks, right? So let's have a look what we did here. For example, in index.js, we had this person service, and person service has a method called find all. So I can pretty much use this one, right? So let's do it.
Yay.
By the way, copying and pasting is, I don't know, 80% of my job. So there is no shame of it. It totally depends how good you can copy and paste. It depends, it decides on salary. Yeah. So I copied and pasted from week 3. And what was the other thing? It's this, right? All right, so this was working in the previous weeks. I'm almost sure that this would work. How do I return this result to the front end, to our browser? What should I write? What should I write here? It was like res, but we have seen res.send, res.send file, and res.render. What should I use here? I don't hear. Sorry. Send. Okay, let's try send first. Because I want to make, before rendering anything, I want to make sure that I can actually get the people here. It crashed. What happened? I was going to show you in the browser, but my node mount didn't allow me to actually. So whenever I use await here, awaits are only possible inside asynchronous function. But how does it work in the week 3? Let's have a look. Well, this await is actually inside an asynchronous function. What do I do now? Well, I just change my function definition to be an asynchronous one. Here, this is the beginning of my function definition. I'll just add the async keyword here. Is it okay? Okay, so it restarted. So do you think it's gonna work? What are we expecting to see? Let's see. Wow, it's... So I don't know why, but I have Arman twice, I guess, and one Mert here. Obviously, we have one Arman, but I don't know. I think I typed node index and it created it. So this is listing the people in my database. However,
Yay.
well, this is our first dynamic content. Let's celebrate that part.
Yes.
Up until now, we have been all static. Now, this is the first dynamic part because now whenever there is a new person, it's going to be here immediately. We don't have to change anything. It's going to be available to anybody.
All right, wait. Then let's make sure we get this right. Let's make sure everybody implements this. Everybody who's following the content, writing the code. Let's make sure you see the dynamic content. You see the JSON out there, the results of your databases. We hope you will have a couple of people in your database. Yeah. Let's do const people equals await person service dot find all and rest send people. It is almost like console log. If you look at it, rest.send is almost like console log. But instead of sending it to the console, it's sending it to the browser. The first lines of index.js, yeah, let's go up. we are requiring the person service, which is already in our code base, as an example from week 3. So what we did is we are requiring the services folder and person service underneath it, which has a find all method that will return all the people in your database. Raise your hands if you require help. We have a couple of available teaching assistants that are gonna run over and help you. It's fine. You don't need to struggle on your own. Yes. Let's take a couple of minutes to get this right.
Yeah, so the question is, when we do rest.render here, we just set index, and just like we did here, like we didn't do any dir name or any dot index HTML, so we didn't have to tell Express.js where this index pug is. The magic is that the default folder for that is views. So whenever you place any pug file under views folder, views directory, it is there. It knows where to look. If you want to do, if you want to make use of another directory, then you have to also tell it. But this is the default one. But we're not gonna be needing that for now. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Okay. The question is, I'm seeing a really nice JSON representation here, and you probably won't. The reason is that I also cheated a bit. I forgot to delete. I have an extension in my browser which helps displaying this nice. It's also okay if you cannot display it this nice. Are there any
questions? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
Just make sure that the browser URL is localhost 3000/person/all. I have seen this multiple times. Obviously, we didn't change localhost 3000. The content there is still hello. And the people actually appear on /person/all. That's what we did on our code base. We did app.get. So whenever somebody requires /person/all from our application, then what we're going to do is we're going to wait on the person service to find all the records of people and then send it to the front end. Make sure you are browsing localhost 3000 /person/all and raise your hands if you need help.
Are there any other questions that I can answer in the meanwhile? Please raise your hand if you need help. That bit is important. By the way, for example, if you're having understanding what this line is, it's okay, because most of the time you're going to be doing, for example, this line once, and that's it. So you're going to do this line once in your project, and it's going to be there forever. But if you're having problems implementing this endpoint, please raise your hand and we can help, because this bit is important. You will be implementing a lot of paths, a lot of endpoints like this in your homeworks, and you're going to need this information. Sure. What else can I do with send? Set. Basically, you can do a lot of stuff. Let's take help from our Visual Studio Code. Let's do this, app.set, and read the definition. Oh, how do I do that? All right, let me just do this. Okay, here. The example we have here is foo bar. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. The thing is that you can set whatever value to whatever value you like. But here, the thing is that because we just installed Pug, you remember we type npm install Pug. So we have the Pug now. For Pug engine, this part is a keyword. So it looks for this one. Whenever it sees this one with a value, it behaves differently. But normally you can do anything you like and it won't have an effect in your project. Yeah, exactly. So this is a variable that you introduce in the Express.js, and for some applications it's important, but you can have any value you like. I would say it's not that important, but you might need it later. But for this project, you won't need it anymore.
Anybody who needs help? Are we all set? Are you sure? Do you have it? I see people doing high five there, so it should be good.
Okay, that's a good sign.
Yes. Did you see it? Does it work?
Nice.
Perfect. Cool. Okay, I wanted all of you to do this part because this is basically the backbone of your homework. You need to expose the data that you have in your database over a URL, just like this. Display all the, I don't know, student records that you have, the restaurants that you have, whatever entities that you have in your system, whatever objects, models you have in your system, or let's say whatever services you have in your system, probably should be exposed by certain URLs. And I'm going to talk more about the homework later, but that's why we did this part. It is very crucial that you get this part right. Fetch the records, show it to the user in the browser. All right? Cool. What is next?
Next is that we just returned the data to people, to front end, to our browser, but we didn't actually make use of Pug files, right? We only introduced here, but for person/all, it doesn't do anything. Let's try to make use of that one. So here, actually, I want to keep this one. Let's create a new Pug file from scratch. So I will name it as person.pug. By the way, there is a logo here. It has a plus sign, and if you're under the views folder, you can click on it, and you can create a new Pug file. I just created a new one. It's empty. So this file, I wanna use this file to be able to. Let's first display the number of people in my database. So let's start simple, right? But let's cheat a bit. So how we were doing in index Pug. We were first extending layout because I don't want to type this part again. This is some useful content. I want to have a title, for example. I want to have a nice font. So I don't want to type it again. I just want to extend layout. Then I can introduce my own content here. I will, again, shamelessly copy paste from this. And I will clear out this part because this is the part that I want to introduce my content. But again, let's go step by step. Let's make sure that this Pug file works. I want to put something here. Hello from person.pug. I saved it. And instead of doing that one, by the way, this is just making sure that it works. So instead of index, I'm writing person here. Index meaning is that it would render the index Pug. Person meaning that it would render the person.pug. Let's go. Refresh. So hello from person.pug. Nothing new here. It's all fine. We're just testing out our new file. So new file should be okay. And also let's see if it would extend from the layout. So in head, we have this title and script, and we also have a console log. So it's successfully extended from the layout. It's nice. Let's introduce the dynamic bit. I'm just clearing out this part. So the next thing I will write here is the number of people in my database. So that part is clear. So at this exact moment, I need something. I need something dynamic. How do I do that? I need a magic here. In our JavaScript files, we have a backtick. I think we didn't use it here, but in this templating, there is a special syntax that you can use variables. The syntax is that it is well, to be honest, I don't know what this symbol means. I would call it hashtag. It's hashtag and curly brackets. And the moment you type it, you would see that it actually changed color. It's yellowish, I would say, somewhere between yellow and white. It's definitely different than this one. So here, I need a way to be able to display the data that I just fetched here. But is there a way that I can pass this data to this file? I mean, there should be a way, right? This is the whole purpose of using pack files. So let me just type here, if there is a way that if I had an access to this file, this variable, okay, this was people, not person. Let me put it here. So if there is a magical way that I can access this people variable, this would work, right? People.length. Let's see what we're gonna see. Okay, so we are seeing this error. Obviously, well, it's magic, but it's not that magic. We need a way to tell this template to use this people variable. How do we do that? Well, one way is you can go and read how you pass variables to pack files, but now I'm gonna tell it now here. Render actually expects another parameter here. The first parameter was the name of the file that we want to render, and the second parameter is the variable bit, is the dynamic bit. So we are passing this dynamic part to our person pack file, and it's gonna be available to this template. Let's do that.
Wait, I missed it. So if you go back to person pug,
yeah,
we said we wanted to write the number of people in a dynamic way. And thankfully, people came up with a weird way of putting dynamic data in our template, and it's hash in curly braces.
Yep.
And then we write something like people.length. We don't know what people is at this point. Hopefully, somebody will provide us what people is. And then we go to index.js. Yeah, and here we have to have a way to pass people into the template.
Yeah,
cool.
Okay, so for example, you can have a help. You can get a help from your Visual Studio Code. It says that the first parameter is view, and it's a string. But there is also a second parameter which is optional. How do I understand that it's optional? It has a question mark. Yeah. Options question mark.
It
right?
couldn't make up its mind about it. Options, maybe.
Options, yeah, fine. So what is this type? It expects an object. Options should be an object, right? But what do you think people is here? People is an array, right? So we need to pass an object, but this is an array. So let me just create an empty object. Obviously this would work, but we still couldn't pass this variable. So I want to pass this one, people. And so I want to pass a variable named people, and this people should be that one. But this is just by coincidence. For example, I can call it person, but the thing is that now the variable that is going to be exposed, that is going to be available here, would be the person. So the naming here matters. You cannot just type whatever you like. Well, actually you can, but whenever you change something here, you also need to change it here. So think of this object as the object available in this file. Whatever you put here is going to be available here. Because I'm a nice person, I want to name it the same. But there is also a shortcut. If you're using the same name, you can just omit this part. It's going to be the same. But for the sake of completeness, let's use the longer version. So with this way, I'm passing this object to my templating engine, to person file, pug file. I'm hoping that now whenever I type people here, these people will be available to me. Let's see if it's gonna work.
Ooh.
So yeah,
Okay, so we have the number of people.
But
Yeah.
again, this is a bit boring, right? Who are these people? Number is not really something I can make use of. I want to see who these people are. So I knew that I have, for example, 2 Armans. I don't know why, and 3 here. And I
I
want to
think
see.
the world will do just fine with one. We don't need multiple.
In a moment, we will be deleting you then.
Okay, that's good. Let's delete some of the Armans.
But in order to be able to delete or decide who to delete, let's try to list all the people, and then we can have a better understanding what's going on in our database. I will just try to put more stuff, more dynamic stuff here. So this part is actually really JavaScript, right? People.length. So I'm writing here people.length, and it works. Also it would work here. If I type people.length at this point, it would also work. So people might wonder, right? What is the extent of it? How far can I go here? For example, let me do another paragraph here. The first people is, let me also.
The first people, the biblical people, or
So again, this part is dynamic, but if length works, this is an array, this should be an array, then for example, people, and I'm gonna try to do this. This would work, right? Let's try to print out the name of the first.
Is it my
one.
name? Is it my name? Am I the first person?
Let's see.
Yes, I'm the first person.
Nice. Okay, now we know who to delete, right?
Okay.
But our aim was to actually print all the people in our database. So obviously, if you know one way, you can just multiply it and it would work, right? So yeah, like 1.
Cool.
Yeah, this works, right? Kind of. And let me, I don't know, P1 was not good. Let me do it with, so it's more readable. So I listed all the people in my database. Or did I?
You did.
Are these all the people? But if, for example, now I refresh my page, we had 3 people, but what if somebody created to my application? And what if we had 4 people? Would it be here? Why do you think it wouldn't appear here? People, sorry?
Yes, people is not dynamic. We're still struggling with being very boring, very static. So at every bit, we're introducing some moving parts, some dynamic parts, but still some other parts are hard-coded, is what we call in software engineering. We have hard-coded the number of people that we have. We have 3 of them right now, which doesn't really work for us, right? We have to find another way of making sure we can print everybody, regardless of how many people we have, which in Facebook's case is very limiting. Does anybody know the limit of friends that you can have at Facebook?
Is there a limit?
Yeah, anti-social people. Anybody knows the limit of friends? Nobody hit that limit? 5,000, yes. You can have up to 5,000 friends on Facebook. And at a single time, you can only print, I don't know, 100 of them on the page, because these operations are very, very costly. So we're going to write a very innocent version of that will print every record we have in our database, because we have a tiny, tiny database.
But we all agree that this wouldn't work, right? Because this is not actually dynamic. We are specifically accessing to the first user, second user, third user, and so on. So we need a way to actually print everything in the database. But how would you do it in JavaScript, in Node.js? Because we are kind of writing JavaScript here, but not exactly. But how would you do it, for example, here? If I want you to write all people's names here, how would you do it?
Is it working? Oh, it's working.
Oh.
Yay! We finally managed to get it working. Oh, where should I stand? Okay, I'm talking into this box. Yay! Now, whenever somebody has a question, I will just throw this at you so that you can ask your question. Is it? Okay. No, my microphone is off.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a dangerous experiment that we're going to do. The next person to ask a question will bear a burden. I'm going to throw this at you.
So we use loop. That wasn't a question, that was the answer.
Thank you. The experiment kind of worked. We will use a loop in our template to do this. I don't know how to silence this, so bear with me. I hope if I put it back, it's gonna stop the feedback.
All right.
It didn't really work, but that's fine.
We can still throw it just for sport.
Just for fun.
Yeah. So the question was, how would you print all the names here? And the answer was using a for loop. That's totally correct. For each, yeah. Then I'm assuming that there is a better way printing all the names here, like something like for each, right?
Map for each. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm hearing great answers. Unfortunately, there is no map in Pug, but there is a loop. There is a each. So the syntax is like this. Each, well, as you can see, whenever I finish typing each, it changed color so that I would understand it's a keyword. Each person in people.
Ooh.
So at this point, this is basically for each loop in JavaScript. I'm iterating over people array, and for each person in this array, I want to do something. What do I want to do? Well, nothing fancy. Let's just print the names again.
Do you need curly brackets there?
That was my next question. Yeah, but all right. Let's see here. So yeah, this is not quite
Sorry.
Dynamic. Nah, not a problem. So whenever you need a dynamic content, you need this ugly bracelets. Is it hashtag, hash, and des? Let's refresh the page again. Arman, Matt, and Arman.
Finally, we have it. The real first dynamic content for our web application. Now you can list however many records you have, hopefully without crashing your operating system. If you have billions, it's going to have a trouble. I have a weird story. We talked about naming, right? We talked about naming things. It's very difficult. There is an alternative to Pug, another template engine that still uses the curly braces. For some reason, software engineers have, I don't know, they have a thing for these curly braces. They really love it. And they called that handlebars, the template engine. Instead of Pug, it made more sense because if you rotate the curly bracket, it looks like a handlebar that you can work out on. Right? If you rotate it, I don't know, like 90 degrees counterclockwise, at least the closing one, it looks like a handlebar. That's why they called it a handlebar as a template name.
Mustache.
Another template engine is Mustache. That's like curly mustache. Because if you rotate it the other way, then it looks like a mustache. So yeah, we actually, can you please stand up? we have the template engine mustache here. Exactly, the curly bracket. So people really tried to come up with interesting names, realistic names for what we're trying to achieve. So do not forget, whenever you need to display dynamic stuff, you have to have that curly brackets, handlebars, or mustache in your template. So if you type person.name without it, it's not going to render what you're looking for. Great.
All right. Maybe we can also print the ages of people, and that's going to be it. Again, I'll just copy paste and let's just test it out, right? Okay, we have at least 2 Arman, but at least they're at the same age. So it's not that weird at all. So this is how we do it. Whenever you need a dynamic content, you need mustaches. That's it. You can obviously extend this, for example, to build a profile page, but this is not today's topic. I want to move on with the API part because we dived into the view engines and stuff. This wasn't the really topic of today's. Of course, it was part of it, but I want to continue with the web server stuff. Let's implement another endpoint. And at this endpoint, I want to get the details of a person. So let's assume that we want to build a profile page, but obviously when you're building a profile page, you cannot build a profile page by getting all the people, right? You need a way to fetch individual person. So this thing wouldn't work. But how do we do that? Let me again just copy paste because it's gonna be quite similar. So I wanna have an endpoint, have a path to respond. And I already show you it's gonna be person, but instead of all, it's gonna be person slash, for example, 1 or 2 or 3. Basically, the ID of the person that I wanna reach the details of. So how do I make sure that my web server knows how to respond to that? Well, we can cheat, and in like line 15, we're already seeing that person, but here it's gonna be the ID, right? So it's gonna be person ID, and I will respond to that. But here I was typing person slash 1, so let's do that. So whenever I type person slash 1, I need to fetch the details of the first person, the person with the ID 1, and I want to return that person detail to my browser. And I don't mind what my browser does with it. Maybe it will display a nice profile page. Maybe it will be tagged in a photo. I don't mind. But the endpoint of the purpose of this endpoint is to be able to return the details of this person nicely and cleanly. All right, the first challenge is, of course, fetching the data from the database, because if we don't have the data, we cannot return it. So I need some help here. How do I fetch details of a specific person?
We go to week 3.
Yeah.
And copy paste, right?
But however, we are already seeing an example here. So we obviously are gonna make use of person servers. So I will just type person servers and dot. Then my IDE will display me some helpful functions. It has like find all, say all, but the method I need is find, right? So we actually had a find function inside this person service, and when I type the brackets, again, my Visual Studio Code helps me. It expects an ID. If you're confused about it, we can just take a look here. The original implementation, where was that? It's find, and it just expects an ID. All right, I'm going back to index.js. So I want to see the details of the first person. And let me just do this, const person.
Is that me?
Yes, it's you. You're the first always.
Yay.
And well, we can render something, but at this point, I'm done with the POC. I just want to be able to display anything in the front end. I just want to make sure that I'm returning the correct data. So I will just use good old rest send person. I just saved. Do you think it's gonna work? Yes? No? Yes. It did not. And my server is still running. What do you think what went wrong here? What is wrong? Template, but I'm not into templates now. I'm just interested in the data. The data is empty. Await, yes. So I'm gonna, I have to wait for my database to find that person, because I told him, him, her, whatever. I told my database to find that person, but I didn't wait for the answer. I immediately returned. I have to wait for it. But now, if I save it, I know that it's gonna crash. Why? Async, yes. So do you see any other errors here? Do you think it's gonna work now? Where? Okay, let's try then. It didn't work. Is it okay? Can it be IDs? Let's try something else. Maybe it wasn't one. Okay. Arman, you're the first one, but your ID is not one. It was two. I don't know why. Okay,
It's
so
okay. I can live with that.
my now web server knows how to respond to this request. It's two here. So it's person/2. It's okay, right? So now I can build a profile page for anybody? Not really. I can build a profile page for Arman. Because why? My web server only knows the ID of Arman and nothing else. What do you think happen? What do you think is going to happen when I type here person/1? My web server doesn't know how to respond to that request. It only knows how to respond to person/2, not 1, not 3, not 4. Well, we had the same problem in PUC file, right? So even this PUC templating engine, it knows how to do a dynamic content so that we don't have to write all the person's names and ages differently. So we need a way to do that. What would it be? So we need a dynamic way in our path so that I can use it here. Let me just give you the answer. This is, again, another special character here. When you type this columns here, column ID, this means that whatever comes after person is dynamic. That's great, right? Does it make sense to you? Now, in this way, I don't have to type person/1, person/2, person/3, where I can, but it's not possible. It's not actually dynamic. We are basically defining a path for each user. Like, think of Facebook. It has billions of users, or millions, I'm not even sure. But it doesn't really make sense, right? So we need a dynamic way to be able to fetch users, and this dynamic part should be in the path. And this is the way to do it. So there comes the interesting part, because up until now, we have always been using with REST, because we were always only interested in the response part. We had nothing to do with the request. This is the first time that we are playing with the request, because this parameter is the part of the request. Again, the way to do that is, thanks to Express, this part is included in the request. The way to get it is, it is request and params. Whatever dynamic here is going to be included in the params. So these are called parameters, right? For example, let me ask you a question. So I was typing person in the browser and it was okay, it was working. Do you think it's going to work if I type this? Why? Now I made it a dynamic variable, right? It's a dynamic variable anymore. It's a variable. My web server actually doesn't expect the string literal here, the person. If I type this one, now it responds to person, but with this special character, now this part became dynamic. And the way to access that is request, params, and ID. The magic here is that this should match this ID. So params is a magical keyword. Our Express framework insert parameters into this object, but ID is not a magical keyword. ID is basically what I type here. So if I type test here, then I would have to access it with test. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing magical about it. This should match, and this is
Except
the only
that
way.
it works.
Yeah.
The fact that it works is pretty magical. Think of it like function parameters. So what you have here is almost like a function call, and you're passing in different variables as parameters to it. That's what the column makes for us. And whatever you type after it, in this case ID, is available as a parameter in your request, and you fetch it through rec.params. Whatever the text is.
So we are expecting this to work now because we make the last part variable and we fetched it. And right now, instead of fetching 1, 2, 3 as a hard-coded parameter, it's now dynamic. So we are going to be getting those variables from the user, from the browser. Let's test it out. So this was obviously working, but this wasn't working because we didn't implement that part. Well, this doesn't work because we don't have a
One is
number.
empty. We
One
deleted
is
it.
empty. 3 is
Yay.
working. 4 is working. So we implement the dynamic endpoint now. And if there's a new user, it's going to be available through this URL. You can just share, well, think of this, your, I don't know, username. For example, facebook.com/your username, right? Apparently, after the slash is variable. Facebook didn't implement it an endpoint just for you, just for me, just for us, right? Obviously, they have a way to have a meaningful data out of the URL params. Can you please raise your hand if this makes sense?
Tricky question. Does it make sense? Raise your hands. If it doesn't make sense, that's fine, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it because you're going to be using this a lot, like a lot.
So anybody for whom this doesn't make sense, please tell us where we lost you, and we're going to try to backtrace it. How do we know the type of the ID? We don't. It's always text. In the URL, everything comes through as text. Any questions? Please. The question is ID something that is declared in the object? And the answer is yes. Our service, the base service that I wrote, actually inserts IDs to the objects that you're saving. We're going to see this with MongoDB as well. Every object, a unique object in our database, should have a unique identifier. That's what the ID is for. And obviously, you could build a custom function to receive a name, for example, and search for that name in your objects and display that. This is for more advanced users or more experienced developers among you. You can do anything you want. You can write any parameters here to look for in your database and display it on the page. Any other questions? I see there's a lot of chat going on between you. So either talk to me or don't talk among yourself. Please, question. Yeah, so the question is, you could also put a column before person and it would be dynamic, and that's true. So that's not intended. You almost always start with a hard-coded path to identify which model or which service you're looking at. But you could also make it dynamic and get the model name through one single giant request handler is what we call this. But that's really a terrible practice. Don't do it. Any other questions? We're here to answer your questions. Please ask me. Ask me anything. Don't worry about Google. I'm here. Okay. Yeah, please. Question. Dynamic is a term that's also used. We're using dynamic a lot. Yes, because this course is all about exposing whatever we have in our database without knowing what we have in the database. So we're saying, give us everything, or give us this certain ID. The user knows it. For example, in Twitter, you know who you want to follow, right? Twitter doesn't know. So it has to be dynamic, which means the input is generated in your mind as a user, transferred to the browser, and then to the application. In this course, we're using it mostly as a term. I don't know, like, if there are any uses of dynamic, please let us know. But it's, yeah, whenever we say dynamic, it means that we don't know ahead of time the intention. The intention is generated with the user. So in this case, for example, we can figure out, I don't know, person 1000 or something. Later in our application, we could do person 1 billion for Facebook. The intention is not known ahead of time. Any other question? So the question is, can you have multiple parameters in the URL? And actually you can. So you can do /person, that should be static, /ID, and /age, I don't know. Obviously ID doesn't make sense because ID is unique always. Age is not unique. So you can say, you know, instead of ID, you could type name, and then you could say, fetch me all the people with this name and this age. There is a slightly better way of doing it. We're not going to cover it in the lecture. That's through URL parameters and URL query parameters. And you can search for it online, query params, and how they work. But yeah, there is a way to do that, of course.
The only trick is that, for example, when you introduce another variable here, it's, let's say, name, it's going to be available here, rec params and name. And as long as you are consistent with the naming that you put here, it's going to be totally okay. But let me revert that part and here.
All right, we have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah. So I have two topics that I want to cover today. Up until now, we always requested data from browser to be able to display something, right? We didn't create anything. We only displayed whatever we have. But one of the purposes of this course is that we should be able to give our users to be able to create something. Because obviously, like, internet is all about creating now. You post a comment, you create something. You upload a picture, you create something. You push a commit, you create something. It's
content creators. You upload a YouTube video.
You create a lot of media content. So it's all about creating. But up until now, our web server only knows how to serve whatever it already has. It doesn't know how to create it, and it doesn't also enable our users to be able to create content. So let's do that. There's a slightly different verb now. Up until now, we have already typed app.get 3 times, I guess. So this is obviously the verb that we use to get information from our server. The keyword, the verb to create data is post. Again, I'm not sure about who came up with this idea, but think about you're posting something somewhere. So you're posting a form to somewhere, and you're sending data with it, and you're submitting an application, for example. So by convenience, post is available also as a function in our Express, and it is quite similar. The first parameter is what? Is the name of the path. However, there comes the interesting part. Well, of course, let me also just create the callback. It's obviously, again, rec and res. So this is just empty. However, the only dynamic way from browser to our web server we know of is putting this, right? So we can as well just do this, but we also need the name of the user, right? Then we need to do this. Then we also need the age. Then we need to do this. Then we need the profile photo, right? Then we need to do this. Well, I think you're seeing where I'm going. I'm going nowhere. It's a dead end. And of course, if you think of this as a person who is signing up to your application, there will be a username here, right? Because he's signing for the first time, and a password. Again, obviously this doesn't make sense because whatever you type here, like I'm typing here and my browser is suggesting me something that I typed earlier, person 23 here. Like, have you ever typed your password into your address bar?
No.
If you did, you should change that password. Yeah. It's logged everywhere, literally. Whenever, even you don't type it, whenever I type here, if I don't press enter, it's already logged in the Google server. So whenever you type your password here, even for just taking notes, you should change it, by the way. Okay, this is another topic. So the basic idea is that we need a post request, not the get one. But post has a special functionality. It has a special, let's say, container to be able to transfer data safely. Well, we can arguably safely, let's say, but it has a different way of transmitting the data. And the keyword here is body. So the data is transferred in the body of the request. However, in GET request, there is no body. It's only parameters, and that's it. Pun intended. There is also body, but it doesn't have any information. But we are not making use of a GET request. So in best practices, a GET request shouldn't supposed to have a body, but all the information, all the data encapsulated in the post request is available to you in the body. But again, what do you think that this body is available to us? Like, let's cheat here. So parameters were available in the request as params. So it should be somewhere here. Well, I keep saying that it should be, but let's see. So let's have a look. Well, actually, let's just do that console log body. And let's see if this works. However, there is also a tricky bit here. I'm really surprised that none of you asked, because this is a really popular question, but from the students. There is a script here called Axios. What does this do? Well, it didn't do anything up until now. Now we're just going to use it. But this is available in the Chrome browser. Let's go here and, I don't know, person all. So this was already what we are seeing. Let's switch the console. Is it big enough? Maybe a bit bigger.
More. Yeah.
All right. So in the elements part, you can see that Axios script is included here. You can think of this again as an external library. You can think of, we just did npm install, but obviously when you did npm install, it installs in Node.js. However, we are sending some data to our browser. So browser doesn't know what Node.js knows. It needs a way to be able to access some external libraries. It's okay if you're confused. There are better ways that we're going to learn in 7th week when Anya was doing the lecture. But just bear with me. Here, the only thing that we should care about is that now that we include that script in our HTML, Axios is available to me. It's not in the browser. In order to test that, let's go to again GitHub. Let's take a look at the console. So now I'm in the console of GitHub page. If I type Axios here, there is no Axios, because GitHub obviously doesn't know what Axios is and they didn't include it. However, we did, and whenever I type Axios, there is something that I can readily use.
So think of this as Google Analytics script that you are adding to your site, or jQuery if you ever used it. What you do is they give you a script tag and you just copy paste it into your whatever HTML file you have. We did this for a library called Axios. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to try accessing our database, our backend, in a different way. So far, we only interacted with our database or with our backend through the URLs, right? We could type whatever we want in the URL and it would show us some results. That's not enough to be able to create data in our application. We need a different way of doing it. So usually you do it by filling out a form. If you filled out any form in any web application, even the Google search bar box is a form, you would know that you could actually do it with like typing some stuff, typing some fields and some values in those boxes, and you can create resources. However, right now we don't have a form on our web page. And what we're going to do is we're going to make use of a library, an external library, to give that functionality to us that will simulate how we're going to access dynamic information when we introduce you the front end on week 7. So Axios will be our tool that's basically an industry standard. And now we're going to use it in the console to create a new person. And again, this is something you're going to be doing in your homeworks. If you were creating, new person or new meetup or new student or new class, whatever, you will be doing it from Axios and from the front end. So that's why what we're going to type right now is pretty important. We already have, a cheat sheet here, obviously. Ömür,
But I only had it. You don't have it because I typed them earlier before
Yeah.
coming here.
so
So
Ömür tried these out while he was getting ready for the course. So Axios.post is what we're going to use. It matches with app.post is what we had previously. And the syntax is, I don't know, might be a little bit confusing, but it's actually very similar to what we had in the backend. In the backend, we had app.post, right? And then the URL. In the front end, with Axios library, we're going to say axios.post/person URL again. And after that person, we're going to pass in an object, the object that we want to create. Okay? That object should end up in the request body on our backend. So if you switch to the backend in the code base, here we see console.log rec body, right? That's where that object should end up. So Axios is a library that allows us to create new objects or delete objects or access any object in our web application. It also works for other web pages as well. So you can try to hack Facebook and others. And whatever we pass in to the post request in the front end in Axios.post will end up in the request body. So if Ömür just hits enter on the console, you're going to see Ömür and age 30. Oops.
so it's undefined. Yeah. There's a way to do that, but we didn't do it. So let's do it together. There is a way to access this this data we just passed. It's available in the request object, but it's really deep dive. So there is another really useful library that we're going to be introducing. I'm promising this is the last library we're going to be installing today. It's the body parser. Well, you can tell it from the name that it's going to parse the body. Then the data we just passed will be available to us in this body.
So the thing here is we are lying to you when we say software engineering is kind of easy. It's modular, and in Express, it doesn't even know how to parse incoming requests. If you want to create something, if you're passing in JSON or a string, it doesn't know how to parse it, how to understand it, almost like JSON.parse. There is no equivalent of JSON.parse in Express. That's why we have to install something called a body parser, and that will enable us to send JSON or an object from the front end to the database that will be available in rec.body. So, it's like Lego parts that are coming together to form an application. Why don't they do it by default? I have no idea. Like, all the engineers in the world doing Node.js lost billions of hours trying to install these things, trying to debug these errors. They still don't make these things default. I have no idea why they don't do it. But yeah, software engineering is really interesting field. You are bound by other people's choices. You benefit from their work, but you are also bound by their choices. The author of Express.js just said, okay, we don't know how to parse a body. You have to install another library to do that. That's what we have to do. But if you do that, then you're going to be able to create a new user. Did you restart the server?
Yeah, so I just, by the way, if you didn't see it while Arman was talking, I just typed npm install body-parser, and it is installed. And I just required it in my index, but I didn't use it. So
Oh, yes.
let's introduce our body parser to Express.
So they were so kind to give us a method called use, at least. So it reads a little bit nicely. app.useBodyParser.
However, so this comes, I wouldn't say tricky, but hopefully someday Express will support it by default so that we won't have to do it. But luckily, you have to do it only once, and it's going to be there for the rest of your application. So here, when we were passing data to our application, we were passing an object. So this is basically a JavaScript object. It's a JSON. So we need to tell body parser to parse the body as a JSON object.
Which is a function.
Which is a
Nobody
function.
knows why. So app.use body parser.json parentheses. These are the things that you're going to copy paste in the future to all of your applications. We never write these by hand. Question? Is it possible to use JSON.parse? Probably you can do it manually as well, but there's no need. That like all the communication between the backend and frontend should be over JSON anyway. So you shouldn't need a manual way of doing it. It should be all automatic. And you just write this line, app.use bodyparser.json. And from now on, everything will be available in rec.buddy. So if you scroll down a little bit in the code, we were trying to log the post request buddy. And now if you go back to the browser and just post that, axios.post.
This one.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just
We're creating Ömür as a new person. And now finally, after a couple of more lines, you see it on your logs, on your server logs. So yeah, we have a way to access a new information right now. And obviously what we're going to do from now on is very simple. If you notice, every week we're building on top of what we used the week before. The week before, we introduced the concept of services that gave you a couple of default methods, and one of them is add. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call personService.add and just pass in request buddy. It's as simple as that. We're just going to call it, and then it's going to create a new person for us.
So I will not repeat the errors that we already did. We have to await for it, right? And when we use await, it should be an async function. And of course, we want to return the result of the creation. So let me just store it somewhere. And let me just return it so that we could understand the person we want to create actually is created. Let's try it one more time.
Yes.
So, but here, I still don't see myself because I didn't refresh the page. It's not really that real time. I need to refresh the page. Let me just do it. So here I am.
Yes.
We just created it.
Let's create a new person. Let's create Miri.
Miri, and I think Miri wants to be 25, so let's do it.
Yes, we now have a new user.
Let's create another one. I'm seeing Jason there, so do you want to be 28? Is it okay? Okay. By the way, let's also look at the data we get from our server. The data we are returning is obviously inside data, and we have other bunch of stuff here which are not our concern at the moment. And I refresh the page, and he will be there. Sure, it's here.
So if you notice something here, we added a web server. What we're doing is we are making sure the URLs can talk to our services. So the post action on the person URL can create a new person on the person service. So all the homework that you're going to do and all the applications that you're going to write from now on in your life as a backend engineer with Node.js will pretty much be this. Create a request handler, have a URL action, have a URL, create a request handler, call some service with the data that you get from the user, either as part of a request parameters or as part of a request buddy. That is all. That is the entirety of web application development. So in your homework, you're going to be exposing the functionality in your services to the outside world through URLs and actions on those URLs. All right? And with this knowledge, you basically don't need a database from this point onwards. You can just build any web application that you want. There is literally nothing else that we're going to teach as a new concept from now on. We're going to be replacing the database with a proper database. We're going to be replacing the front end with a proper front end. We're going to add some testing so we make sure our application works all the time when we're making changes. And we're going to deploy it to a cloud. But this is literally the code that every single Node.js engineer is writing every day. Creating services, we're creating some methods on those services. We're exposing that functionality through request handlers to the outside world. How does it feel? Did you expect it? Did you expect to land at this result in 4 weeks? This is the 4th week. This is the breadth of new concepts that we're going to learn. The rest will be detailing and improving it. Now, there's one more thing that we're going to show in the last 2 minutes, and I think it's about deleting people, right? And please follow us. It's going to be super simple. It's just app dot what? Delete, right? Obviously, delete doesn't work. I guess it's app.del.
I think it's
delete
here.
works?
Yeah.
Did they fix it? Perfect. Previously, it didn't work because delete is a special keyword in JavaScript and it doesn't allow you to write it wherever you want. But now it works. So we're going to be deleting a person that we know, right? So it's going to be /person / colon ID. We want to delete specific people from the database. And as a lot of engineers like to do, and we will just copy paste the code. This is also literally how software engineers work all the time. It's totally legit. You can do it as long as you don't make mistakes.
So the wise people before us, which would be Arman, he already wrote a delete function for us. It's called del here. And
yeah, because I thought delete wouldn't work.
And it expects an ID. So my ID helps me. And how do I get this ID? Well, it's just here, right? We reached the parameter before. It's here. I'm just fetching it from there. And now what? Do you see an error here? So line by line, we are first deleting a person, and then we are returning that person. This, I don't know, from the philosophical perspective, it feels wrong, right?
Once you're deleted. Wait, is there anybody Mexican here? Any Mexicans? Yeah, we had the Day of the Dead last week. You're not dead until everybody who knows you forgets about you. So you could argue that this works. You can delete a person from your mind, but other people will remember. No, I'm just joking.
Okay, so this would work, obviously, but as a good practice, it doesn't really make sense to return something that is deleted and that is never going to be accessible. So in that case, I will just return, I don't know, okay, or something like that. But I'm still awaiting for this deletion to end because I want to make sure that when I send okay to the browser, the deletion already completed. So refresh, I'm not sure what I'm refreshing here.
Let's delete me and see if people will forget me.
The Axios delete, and I'm not gonna do the same mistake again. You're 2.
Yes.
I deleted, so I'm seeing my okay here, so I'm sure that it worked, but let's see. So
I'm still there.
because people are alive, who knows you, right?
Yes. You have to delete me again.
Okay, let's leave one of you at least, right? So let's delete Mert, and when you refresh it, that's it.
The number of people is also updating, if you're paying attention to that. Delete Jason. It's like, hey Siri, delete Jason. Okay, it worked.
So this is updating. This is also updating. This is quite dynamic, so you don't have to control over it. Whatever you have in database is going to be exposed here. So did I make sense today? It's going to be the base of your homeworks. I think Arman is going to talk about it shortly.
Yes, and we finished it on time. If you like that, it's 10 p.m. So the homework. Now, last week you exposed your functionality through services. This week, you're going to expose those services through URLs. Make sure to add as many URLs as you can to create different resources. You don't have to only create resources. You can also do the interactions, and that's what I actually want you to do. Expose the interactions through these requests. So make sure whenever you're posting something that, for example, Armand can attend a meetup, or a student can register for a class, or a teacher can grade a student through this mechanism, right? So what you would do, for example, app.post, let's actually type it. Let's say a teacher should grade a student, right? So we would create a new grade because a new grade is being created. And then we would take in a teacher as a parameter. And then we would take in a student as another parameter, right? And what we would do in our, I don't know, teacher service, we would say teacher service.grade and request.params.teacher and request.params.student. Something like this. Or we would find the teacher service, find teacher, right? And then you would do teacher.grade rec param student. Something like this. Or you would even find the student as well. Teacher service.find, I'm typing fast, rec param student. And then you would do teacher grade student. I hope this example will clarify what we want you to do, because this is what you did before, right? In your index.js files, you found some people, some resources, and then you did an action on them. Grade, join, attend, whatever. This is what we want you to do as part of this exposition to a URL. And from the front end, you will be able to call them, all right? List them, do, I don't know, teachers/all, grades/all, and list all the grades that people would see, or create new grades, create new teachers, create new students. Everything should be dynamic. From now on, we won't have an index.js file. I mean, we will, but it will be this file. We will not have hard-coded people, hard-coded names. It will be on the front end. We're going to use axios.post, axios.delete. Maybe if you like axios.get as well is also there to expose this functionality. All right? Is it clear? Thank you for coming today, and a huge applause for Emir.
Thank you.